Welcome back to Modern Tactical Shooting. This video I'm going to be talking about CQB, and that is close quarter battle, and the issues I have with the common SOP that has the number 1 and number 2 man clearing corners first. So let's go. All right, first up, before I actually get into the issues I have with the common CQB methods that are out there, I'm going to say it up front, I'm going to hurt a lot of feelings with this video, and that's for 2 reasons. The first has to do with egos. I'm going to hurt a lot of egos. There's a lot of soldiers and law enforcement that have been trained out there in CQB, and it's been drilled into them that the techniques that they were taught are the best around, regardless if the techniques are actually based on combat experience or not. There's a lot of institutionalization in the military where guys are taught one way and they're told, hey, this is the best, don't question it. So it's drilled into them, hey, this is the only way to go. And when new methods do come out, because that's not how they were trained in the beginning, they immediately, blow off those new methods, even though they might be combat proven, and they do this really out of ignorance. Also, I'm going to make a lot of people perhaps frustrated in the fact that I'm not going to provide clear solutions to the problems I'm going to highlight with the common SOPs that are taught in primarily the military in CQB. Let's face it, this is YouTube, and I don't want to be passing out current practices that still exist in some units. I don't need future foes or current foes watching this video and seeing the best techniques that are out there. And everything I'm going to talk about, I found open source material. All the videos I'll be showing you can get right off the internet. So I'm not going into anything super classified, and I'm not, again, going to spell out best practices that I know are in use with some units. So why am I making this video? My goal in this video is to get those who are in the profession of arms to start thinking about their SOPs in CQB and question, why are they doing things a certain way? And if the answer is, well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is what the manual says, or hey, this is how I learned it back in 2000, then that's the wrong answer. And you should be looking at your SOPs and see if they're based on practical applications that work, or if they're just based on theory. And this is what we've learned in the past, that institutionalization, this is how we've always done it. But question the SOPs and see if there are a better way or better ways. So here's a fun fact. The current SOP that keeps getting retrained and passed on is that it's based on hostage rescue and not CQB. And what's the difference? Well, hostage rescue, your job is to save that hostage or the hostages. Their hostage life counts over the assaulter's life. Whereas in CQB close quarter battle, the assaulter's life counts over anything. When you're fighting in a war, part of it is a war of attrition. The more bad guys you kill and the more good guys that you keep alive, well, then you're going to win the fight. So in close quarter battle, the emphasis is on the assaulter's survival. Whereas again, HR, it's based on the hostage's survival, and I'm going to explain why the SOP is based on HR and why I think it's flawed as being taught as CQB methods. Now, in the manual FM 3-21.8 or Battle Drill 6, it has the assaulters flowing into the room, 1 and 2 man clearing corners first and only engaging center if there's an immediate threat. And in the manual, they leave it kind of ambiguous what is an immediate threat. More often than not, and as it was taught to me back in 2001 when I went through our CQB school, immediate threat was explained to me that it's anything that is blocking the path of the team into the room. So if there's somebody in the doorway, basically at arm's distance and blocking the path of the assaulters going into the room, then the 1 and 2 men can handle it. If the assailant is not blocking the path into the room, if there's an assailant, say, standing 10 feet from the doorway in the center of the room, it's not the job of the 1 and 2 man to engage that threat. That is the job of the 3 and 4 men now. 1 and 2, it's to get in and clear those corners. That is hostage rescue, with 1 and 2 men going in, clearing corners first, basically making space for the rest of the team to get in there, occupying that same space, That is to draw any attention on the hostages onto the assault team. That 1 and 2 man, they're just making space for the rest of the team, that 3 and 4 man, to get in there and finally taking out those center threats. That is not close quarter battle where the assaulter's life comes before anybody in that room. So why go into that room? Again, it's HR. Occupy that space with the enemy, draw their attention off the hostages. Assaulter's lives count second. All right, so here are slides from a slideshow been floating around the military forever, showing the roles the 1, 2, and 3, and 4 man do flowing into a room. So as you can see, number 1 man's job is to clear the immediate threat and then clear his corner. Number 2, clear immediate threat only and then clear the opposite corner. It's not until the 3 and 4 man flow into the room that any center threats are dealt with. Here's some clips of me and a partner. We're going to demonstrate the job of the 1 and 2 man only, flowing in and clearing corners first. Now, I know what many will say, well, a well-trained team, there's not going to be any gaps because the 3 and 4 man are going to be right behind the 1 and 2, and they're going to have that speed, so any threats in the room are going to be engaged almost simultaneously. I'm going to play 2 clips. One is an SF team, the other is an FBI hostage rescue team, doing the classic method of CQB. Here is the SF team first. Now, I don't know about what's going on with those red lasers. I would never run one. I think it was mainly a demo. Visible lasers in the house is only going to get you killed, but let's not get into that. Let's put that same team on the clock now. I'm going to start a timer when the number 1 guy steps into the door and could be visible to the enemy, and then stop the clock when that center threat actually gets engaged by the team. All right, so as you can see from this timestamp in the picture here, it's just over 3 seconds before that center target gets shot. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to give 3 seconds to the enemy to be able to engage me, especially if I'm that number 1 and number 2 man flowing into a room. Again, they didn't shoot him because it wasn't an immediate threat blocking their way into the room, and that's just silly. A guy at the back of the room with an AK can spray into the stack, and to me, that's an immediate threat. All right, here's an FBI hostage rescue team. Let's check them out.
These are FBI special agents practicing an assault on a building where a hostage might be held.
Okay, now again, putting them on the timer, let's see when the center threat actually gets engaged. All right, so a little bit better now, just over 2 seconds, and one could argue, well, it's FBI HRT, so they should be clearing corners and doing classic CQB. Again, I'm not going to give 2 seconds to the enemy. Speed, surprise, and violence of action is only going to get you 1 or 2 rooms. Then surprise is lost and the enemy knows you're coming. So why have an SOP that relies on speed that's going to dissipate, and as opposed to an SOP that has good, solid tactics that will keep you alive in the fight? Now, in 2005, 2006, in Special Forces, there were drastic changes made to how we conducted CQB, and the lessons learned, they were learned the hard way, in blood, paid for by Special Forces service members, to prove that the classic techniques, these 1994 man stacks, clearing corners first, does not work. So we made radical changes to the SOP. One of them was to bump up to 5 and 6 man stacks. 4 men cannot cover enough angles while moving through a structure or an urban area. It's fine for room takedown, but everywhere else is going to be gaps. And also exactly how we flowed through the doorways. Now, I'm not going to break down exactly how it's done, but we did make radical changes to it with a shift and a focus on CQB, which is mainly get rid of as many threats as you can before you actually get into the room. Now, unfortunately, I learned these new SOPs in 2006, 2007, but I saw it as time went on, as more and more guys in SF who had this experience from Baghdad got out, as well as the lessons learned not being properly captured in documentation. The last SFALC manual is from 2006. It talks about shooting targets before you go into a room, but it's not very well described at all. Because of this, more and more SF guys were learning the original way just because it was not captured correctly. Also, because guys who had not experienced that heavy fighting in Baghdad, they learned CQB the earlier way. They never had to actually put it into practice, so they just carried on teaching the older stuff because they didn't understand the new changes. By 2015, I would say more than half of the SF teams that I encountered were back to doing it the old way, as opposed to the newer methods that we had implemented after the experiences in Iraq. Now, there are still some good techniques out there. I found this video online. There are not a lot of videos, I think, in my opinion, that show proper CQB. That's actually a good thing. That means less videos for bad people to watch. But here's a MARSOC team doing things differently. Let's see if you notice the changes in this clip. So again, I'm going to frustrate a lot of people. I'm not providing exact solutions in this video, but you ought to be thinking about how can I engage threats before I occupy that room that's filled with bad guys. Slow pie, dynamic pie, there's lots of techniques out there. There's still units that do CQB, I would say, a more correct way, a more applicable to actual room-to-room combat, and not some old HR cookie cutter style techniques that are just squeezed onto every problem. Close quarter battle is about problem solving, so why just go with one SOP and expect it to work for everything? So I know the question is, if there are better techniques out there, why do units keep reverting to the classic method? Well, one has to do with self-induced training scars. One thing I saw quite regularly, even in special forces, using the older SOP when going against Op4 role players, opposing forces when you're doing force on force with simunitions or whatever. More often than not, you would see the Op4 be heavily scripted and limited in what they're allowed to do. Meaning we'd stack up, get ready to take a building, and the bad guys or the role players playing bad guys inside would be told, okay, you sit in this room, wait till they come in this room to engage you, you sit there. So they're placed in onesies and twosies throughout the rooms and not given a lot of freedom maneuver, so they basically wait for us to flow in and die in place. That's not how bad guys would operate in real life. So the SOPs, would appear to work. Well, they work when the Op4 aren't allowed to really act aggressively, or even worse, start using techniques, CQB techniques against you. The worst case scenario would be you stack up to go take a building, you look down the hall and you see the enemy stacked up and coming at you. Well, that's the future fight, us fighting a trained enemy and not just, people no training that we're used to in Iraq and Afghanistan. Every time we have run up against determined enemy, we have taken casualties, especially using the classic methods. So that's why they keep coming back. And again, this goes back to the beginning of the video. There's a lot of egos involved. Well, hey, I learned it this way, so this is the way that works. Well, have they actually employed it in real CQB fighting? All right, so there it is. That is my opinion, my take on the flaws of the classic 1 and 2 man clearing corners first, 4-man stacks in CQB. It's just my opinion. And again, why am I making this video? Hopefully to aid those whose job it is to go into harm's way, that they're, question the SOPs again, make sure you're doing the best SOP out there, the best techniques that solve that problem and keep you alive. And for those civilian shooters out there who could be going and paying for courses and training, ask questions. Hey, why am I being trained like this? Is this really a good method, or is this just some old drivel that's trying to be passed off as cool CQB? Now, I realize I probably have created more questions than I have answered them. But again, my intent is to just get people to start thinking about CQB, close quarters combat, alternative ways to solve the problem of, how to clear out take on enemy when you're going room to room. Now, generally, my videos are all about shooting techniques and gear used in shooting to make you a better shooter. If you like this CQB video and you want to see more on the subject of close quarters battle, by all means, post it down in the comments. Reach out to me on my various social media platforms. And as always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative. I'm Jeff Gerwich. Thanks for watching.